go button. Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker, and this is WP Water Cooler, episode number 224. Today's topic is WordPress security updates. This is going to be a light episode, right? It's not. We're not going to. It's going to be a simple. We're just going to coast right through it.
I think we just say yes, and we're done. Yes, you should do it.
yes,
we're done.
Well, let's go around the room real quick. Get everyone introduced. Aaron, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Aaron Campbell. I lead the core security team, and I guess I've been involved in WordPress for about 10 years, but now getting to do some more security stuff.
Awesome. Good to have you. How about you, Adam?
I'm Adam Silver. I run Concierge WP out here in SoCal, podcast weekly at kitchensinkwp.com and Get Options podcast.
Nice. Good to have you.
Thanks.
How about you, George?
Hi, I'm George Stefanis. I work on the Jetpack team at Automatic, and we'll be speaking next weekend at WordCamp Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So anyone on the East Coast, swing on by.
Sweet.
Awesome. Russ, what about you?
I'm Russ. I work at WebDev Studios. I do support at Maintain, and come check out WordCamp San Diego, where I will be speaking at 10:40 in the morning.
Nice.
I'm excited about that.
Nice. Good to have you. How about you, Topher? Tell us about yourself.
I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I build websites for a living. I work for Eyewitness Design at the moment, working with Tanner Mushi. And yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Good to have you. Steve, what about you?
I am Steve Zenkin. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup. And our next meetup will be this coming Monday night right here in Huntington Beach at 7 o'clock. And I will also be speaking at WordCamp San Diego on Sunday, though.
Yeah. I'm speaking
Awesome.
Sunday.
I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over Jason Tucker on Twitter and jasontucker.blog. And I do a show also here on WP Water Cooler called WP Lab. We do that on Thursdays. Feel free to go check that out. So this particular episode 224, is a two-parter from last week where we were talking about theme updates and plugin updates, and we tried our darndest not to talk about security updates because we wanted to bring a great panel together here to kind of talk about it. So let's talk a little bit about security updates. You know, that's that update that shows up on your, sometimes shows up in your WordPress that says, hey, you know, there's a security update. You should update it. It's usually a dot release, or it's just a major release that just needs to be pushed out there.
That's a good band. That's a very good band name.
Dot release?
Yeah.
Dot.
I mean, honestly, security releases aren't always advertised as security releases, often for very good reason. So when we're talking about you should always update security releases, you should always update releases, period, no matter whether they're major releases, minor releases, because you don't always know if there's going to be a security thing in it or not.
Steve totally agrees with you, right, Steve?
I don't. I'm sorry to be a naysayer here. I don't typically, for my production service, I don't typically do .0 releases. I wait for .1.
So I don't know that it makes sense necessarily to skip the .0s, but I definitely advocate a lot more for doing the minor releases quickly and as quickly as possible. Those are much more likely to contain security fixes. For major releases, if there are security fixes, we do try to backport as far as we can, although eventually that will be limited to only a few versions. But doing those minor version updates, like that's really important.
I totally agree with that. And so what Aaron's talking about and what we do quite a bit. So when 4.7.0 came out, we did not upgrade, right? And actually we waited till 4.7.2 to do a major upgrade. But when 4.7.1 was coming out, they were doing updates to 4.6 as well. So it was 4.6.2 and 4.6.3. So those same security releases got into the older version, right? So we're and this isn't for everybody, but generally as a rule, we wait for stable versions before we do an upgrade to a production server.
Now, that's for WordPress core updates.
Correct.
Now, plugins and themes can have security updates as well.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes they just get installed.
What?
Right?
What?
Well, so usually what happens though is that there's a security update that comes in core and says, here's what we noticed, here's what we fixed, and if you have, if you're using this hook or this filter, you should go in and update it inside of your plugin. So those usually follow after those things, or it's in like the beta version or the release candidates.
A lot of plugins and themes will just have security fixes just because they found a security bug in their own thing. They tend to be a little less structured, especially some of the less popular ones. So for those, it probably is a lot more likely to have security fixes that just come out in a major release.
I want to go back to what I was saying before, and I want to do this on purpose because I'm not recommending to the audience that you don't upgrade. In no way am I saying that. I'm just saying what works for us, and because we've got a rigorous testing process that we go through. I think what's important here is that you read the notes, read what's in the release for everything, whether it's core or plugins or anything. Just do your homework so that you know what you're updating.
And on the plugin side, it'll tell you if it's been tested with the current version you're running on core.
So one thing we did this month at the meetup for for the WordPress meetup group in Vegas was we walked through change logs and showing people how to read them to see what changed in each version, and a well-documented one like Jetpack and EDD versus a non-well-written one like random plugins out there.
So, Steve, let me ask you though: the rigorous testing? You're testing that obviously on a staging server?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when a new release of anything comes out, we test off-site before we push anything to production.
Right. I mean, I knew that you did that. I wanted to give you the softball.
Yeah, that's cool. I understood.
I have another question though. You were talking about moving from 4.6 to 4.7.2. Are you ever bringing sites? Are sites ever falling more than one version?
No, not our sites.
Okay.
Yeah. Now we will inherit sites. I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Aaron. We will inherit sites that are several versions old, and then we go through pretty rigorous bug testing or beta testing before we do more than one version to update.
One version old, I don't see as much of a problem as long as you're staying on the latest point release for that version. Falling much further behind while we do try to backport as many releases as possible with security fixes. The more our architecture, the more all the underlying code changes, the harder it is to backport security fixes reliably, very far back. So eventually we're probably only going to go a few versions back, so stay as close to current as possible. But one version, that's doable.
Yeah, we're never more than, on the sites that we're maintaining, we're never more than one version old.
How about your own site? I'm just curious on your own site for Zeek, because I always look
the cobbler's son has no shoes.
Okay.
Your site just static.
You do that once a year, right? You write the blog post, you hit update.
Just like how often I blog. Thank you, Jason.
Okay.
Sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
Well, I see that a lot. I mean, I'll look at sites, that have been just almost forgotten about, because someone will hit me up and say, hey, something happened. The company in question who originally created it, because I'll inherit the site. I go back and look at that company, that other agency. Their site is new, modern, relatively current, but maybe not even, if it's around, if the company's still around, but they're running 4.5, 4.4. And but their site has been updated as far as responsiveness. Their core is still old. And then things are broken on their past client who they're now coming to me. But I'm always fascinated, because I try to keep my stuff current, but you're right. I mean,
now, on a lot of the sites we inherit, and I'm going off topic a little bit, but a lot of times we'll inherit sites where they've made adjustments to core, made adjustments to plugins, using plugins that are conflicting, or something is there that's preventing them from doing an update. I hear that from a lot of my clients. They'll call me and they'll say, hey, we need you to work on this because we're not able to update our site at all. Right? We can't update core, we can't update these plugins, we can't do this because when we do it, we get a white screen, right? And that's a symptom of something else.
Right.
Yeah, the dangerous thing about that is that sometimes you'll have a developer that goes in, makes a modification to a theme or a plugin or core and just warns the client, okay, never ever update this thing or the mobile end. Not actually putting any code in place to prevent the updates, but just telling them, or they could have just said, never update this because I haven't tested it. And the client doesn't really know the difference. They just know I'm not supposed to update anything. And then nothing happens.
Jason, episode 225 should just be called Best Practices.
Best Practices.
So, I mean, to what Steve was saying is a lot of people come to us for support and they're like, we want to be on this monthly plan where you guys keep us updated. And after we do a small discovery, we realize that there's a plugin that's auto hiding auto updates. And it's one of those things where they weren't even aware that, you know, there are 5 versions back for this plugin or whatever, because the original developer just turned everything off.
Right.
Or worse yet, when I hate to keep jumping in with worse yet, but
But wait, there's more.
It seems to be the tagline for the day. But then you have systems like cPanel that, when you use their the cPanel native auto installer, will actually install a modified version of WordPress that disables auto updates. I've talked to them about this a couple of years ago, and they didn't seem to have much of an interest in changing it. So we've had folks that, I mean, the idea works, right? That's assuming the host updates cPanel to get the updated version of WordPress, so you can go through and update it from there. And
that's starting to sound like Android right now.
I was gonna say it's like one of those Russian nesting dolls.
It's turtled all the way down.
Is that still the case with cPanel? Because I feel like I was playing with some cPanel installs recently and wasn't seeing that.
So it's not what I need to test and find out what they've been doing lately. I've heard reports that it's still going on, and there certainly still are sites that cPanel had installed that have the blocks in place. I had recommended them to, like, when I talked to them a couple of years ago, to stop like modifying core files to just like return early, and instead use like the core constants to like disallow auto updates and whatnot. Because really, while they can do all sorts of stuff to stop WordPress from updating itself, they can't stop someone from going in via FTP and just uploading a new version. And at that point, all of their careful machinations and workarounds break because WordPress is updated. So what they would have been better doing is just create a single MU plugins file that will track the WP version. When that updates, tell cPanel. When cPanel then can update it and still be aware of what the current state is in all situations.
So Steve, what's MU?
must use. I was going to say to George's point, right? Not all developers are created equally, right? And we say that a lot on this show, right? So as I'm speaking to the developers in our audience, and especially the not so experienced developers, right? Don't edit core, right? Don't edit core WordPress. Don't edit core plugins. Don't edit core. Right? Figure the right way and the best practices to develop something, and you won't run into these problems. Never, ever should you say to your client, I did this, and you can never update this plugin. That those words should not be uttered.
Well, it's one of those things where, you know, somebody says, I want to change, you know, WP admin to, you know, or WP login.php to whatever. And so someone goes and changes that inside the core, and it's like, no, you shouldn't have done that, because now you can never log in ever again. Because you have to go update everything inside of the core WordPress where that file is being called, and so on and so forth. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
So quickly back to the cPanel installer thing, and the reason why I'm so interested in that. Something that I'm trying to do a little bit more with the core security team is reach out to places like that that are affecting people's WordPress security without even realizing the damage that they're doing. So it's one of those things that I'm real interested in trying to fix, because unfortunately WordPress's reputation is tied to everything from plugins to installers, and we need to try to help wherever we can.
If anybody in our audience experiences something like that, do they have a way to contact you with those issues?
Yeah, the best way is to email security@wordpress.org. I mean, alternatively, I'm always on the WordPress Slack and stuff like that. But if you send it to that email address, the whole team can see it, and everybody can pitch in to help.
I mean, we've all seen web hosts that have like a base install of WordPress that's set up that is either being symlinked in, or they're pulling in different pieces to it, so that way you're able to not have to worry about updating WordPress, and WordPress just kind of gets updated by the web host. We've also seen it where they've just locked down it so that you can only do world readable, and that's it. You can't write to it, you can't make any changes to it. And those are the web hosts that are either doing a really good job of making sure that your stuff is being secure and they're going to keep you up to date, or the guy fell asleep at the wheel and they've never updated it, and now you're stuck with an old version of WordPress. And if you fall into that situation, I mean, that's like customer abuse at that point. Like you should just leave that web host altogether and just go find another one. So if you, oh, you okay, Steve?
Yeah, it's this weird cough I've had all week.
It sounds like it's spreading. It's going from like one place to another, right? It's so weird.
I think it's really interesting what Aaron said, though, that like that there's a reputation when it comes to like someone signed up with, you know, XYZ host and, you know, they had a bad experience and it gets thrown on WordPress, where it's not WordPress's fault, because you can go pull that from the GitHub and have a good experience on your local computer. It's really the host, you know. And I think that really shows that you should be with somebody who knows WordPress, not just a global kind of, we offer any kind of hosting.
Yes, but you know that, Russ, but the layperson doesn't know that. And so ultimately, when those things happen, it becomes a PR issue for WordPress.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I was mirroring what you were saying.
So we agree what you're saying.
For once.
Get a room.
Hosts are especially
I have one
difficult
in San
with
Diego.
What's that, Aaron?
Hosts are especially difficult with stuff like that. I mean, a user needs to rely on their host to do it they don't understand and aren't doing themselves. But the problem is they don't even know what it is that they don't understand or don't want to do themselves. So they're not even sure what their host should be doing. And so that's tough. And how do we educate all those people? Well,
it's not only that, but it's the conversation that user has to have with the host to say, hey, I need this done. They don't even know that kind of terminology to get it to that point, other than saying, please update WordPress. I mean, like, that's as far as they can take that conversation.
So what are the next steps that WordPress is going to be looking at in security, doing things with security, making changes to the security model? What are we looking at here in the next couple of weeks, months, even in the year? Do you hear anything about that, Aaron?
Well, as far as the way the security team itself is working, we made some changes pretty recently, trying to get more involved with hosts and that kind of stuff, reaching out and trying to open those lines of communication better. That seems to have been especially effective, so I'm real excited about that. We'd like to try to extend our umbrella out a little further. I mentioned that plugins are, barely anyone runs just WordPress. Everyone runs WordPress with plugins. So especially for some of the more popular plugins, we'd like to be able to sort of be a central place for people to report issues, to help manage security issues with those as well. I kind of want to grow slowly and carefully, making sure that we're not overstretching ourselves, but we'd like to start by taking maybe the 10 or so most popular plugins, bringing them in under the umbrella, and sort of slowly expanding out as we go.
Nice.
Yeah, I watch the news quite a bit, and I haven't heard anything about security on the news. Is this really important?
Aaron, I actually have a question. I have a question for you, Aaron. So let's say I find a security fix, or I find something WordPress isn't doing. I email you at security@wordpress.com or .org. How...
Org.
So,
Definitely .org.
So from today, how long would it take to have that rolled out? Like, let's say that you guys verify that it's an actual fix, it needs to be solved. How long does that process usually take?
So that's one of those "it depends" kind of questions.
But
right?
we never say that on this show.
Well,
the more serious the vulnerability, the quicker we're going to try to act. Also depends a lot on whether it is currently in the wild or not. Is this actively being exploited? If it's actively being exploited and it's pretty severe, we should be able to push out a new version in a few days, maybe less. We want to take our time and make sure that the fix is right and complete. As soon as code goes out in WordPress to fix a security vulnerability, if it doesn't actually fix it, everyone notices, and things get way worse before they get better. That.
Well, the reason I ask you is that there was somebody the other day on Medium that was saying something about, WordPress should be doing this, and fired something at Matt Mullenweg.
Okay, so
wait. I'm not trying. What I'm trying to say is that Matt Mullenweg explained that we do acknowledge that this should be rolled in, but this is kind of our priority. So I was just asking the question: if I bring you something like, where would that fall in that priority chain?
So first of all, for me, for me and for the security team, the security stuff is our top priority. Having said that, the thing that you're mentioning requires some very major architectural changes to both WordPress and to sort of WordPress.org and our update servers and all sorts of stuff. So that's a much longer process. If many sites are potentially vulnerable, we act on that very quickly.
The point I'm just trying to make is that anybody can come up with a security thing and say, hey, we should be doing this, but it's not as easy as saying, oh, let's just merge it in and send out a release. Right. That's what I was trying to get at.
Right.
Exactly.
And, Russ, the other thing is that what Scott had posted on his Medium post was not so much.
We don't want to mention any names.
Yeah.
Or not so much a vulnerability or security.
We'll call him Scott.
Sure. But it was just advocating for additional layers of security hardening. There was nothing that was like available to be exploited. It was just if the WordPress.org master servers get completely hacked and exploited, then bad things would happen. But there are many, many things to prevent that from happening.
I am not arguing that. The point I was trying to make is that even though
we're just trying to reassure our listeners.
Yeah,
definitely.
Definitely. But even though something comes up and we say, hey, there is a process that it's not going to be rolled out in 2 hours. There is a process that says we have to check this to make sure it's going to reach everybody and it's not going to break 27% of the internet.
Yeah. And we try to prioritize. The whole team kind of works together for that. So yes, we want to take as much time as we need to do it right, and that's definitely not a couple hours. So takes time to fix it right, and we always want to fix it right.
Yeah.
Well, there's always things that you should, best practices that people that are doing this type of work should do, and that releasing essentially like a 0-day change that needs to happen and getting that submitted to the right people and having them look at it and not talking about it and not kind of pushing it out there to the dark web or any of those kind of scary things that you don't want any of that sort of thing to happen.
Yeah, and the important thing is if you're running a theme or a plugin or something and you find a security vulnerability in your plugin or it's reported to you, before you actually push that release out, if it's looking like a decently nasty one, reach out to core security team. Just drop them a line first, because sometimes it turns out that, a lot of different plugins are making this mistake. So if you just publish it yourself, that could open up a lot of other vectors and other plugins that it might be better to do a coordinated release among different plugins, or maybe core security team would want to do, if your plugin is large enough, to do a auto update of the plugin to the point releases. But basically, the core security team really, really knows what they're doing. So if you are in any way unsure what to do on a security release, ask, please.
Aaron, I'm curious about something you said. You talked about a major security thing that would, like a drop dead, or a drop everything type of security issue, right? What determines something that's major or minor, right?
So there's a lot of factors. What is sort of worst case scenario, right? What happens to your site? Can somebody make admin accounts on your site? Is that the kind of level that we're looking at? Also, how easy is it to actually do? Does it require a lot of social engineering? Or is it something that you can simply build a script for and let that script run wild on the web and hit a lot of sites? So we try to look at at all those different things. Also, how many sites does it really affect? If the security vulnerabilities in one particular part of WordPress that not all sites are using, that kind of stuff. So we try to look at all three of those things to decide how serious an issue really is.
And so who's the social engineer expert on your team? Because I want to talk to them at the next WordCamp.
Who's the what?
Who's the social engineering expert on your team?
Social engineering expert.
You don't really have to answer that.
I think we all do that a little bit, right?
But what is your mother's maiden
Steve-
name? I've always been wondering about that, Steve. What is your mother's maiden name?
Steve, we're gonna call that guy Scott.
I posted in the chat. If the audience is interested in more, you might read Security's blog. We've given a couple shouts out to them on this show before, and I always find that that's a great place for current security information.
What other places should we look, guys? What other places should we have our listeners and viewers check out?
I mean, just anywhere like on the make.wordpress or like on the WordPress blog itself, or in just any kind of the developer notes on, here's how you should be properly escaping things, just stuff like that. You should be reading the codex and anything that comes from the people who are actively developing WordPress.
Right.
Yeah.
SiteLock also
Know you're
has a
escaping in
blog as well.
Know you're escaping in your sanitizing functions. Know that escaping is about context, while sanitizing is about content.
Yeah.
Follow WP VulnDB to get an idea of when things are out and you need to run through and run your updates because something big has just hit.
So I need an escape plan. I should have a bug out bag ready to go.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
And a burner phone.
Steve, if you need one of those, Dillinger has a great one of those.
Cool.
Cool.
So we talked about security blog, Security's blog, as well as SiteLock's blog, and then the WP VulnDB site. Is there any others that folks should be just looking at?
Well, actually, I was going to just mention, at WordCamps, there's oftentimes an advanced developer or, security track or a couple talks regarding security. Check those out. If you are a developer and you're not sure, go to that. Pick that track for the day or that talk. Because those people are really smart.
Yeah. Well, then looking at we were talking about earlier about looking at the various notes for each version that comes out. The WordPress Codex has a listing of all of those versions that are out there and looking at the change logs for each of those.
Right.
I don't know if you're the kind of person like I am that, my phone goes to update. I don't have it automatically update any of the apps that are on there, but I'll look through each one of those to see, what changes did they add to this? Are they adding advertising to this thing now? Or are they adding, new functionalities and features, or, what is it? So
If you want to know,
looking.
If you want to know more of this, you can always go to DEF CON in Las Vegas. Make sure you just log into a public Wi-Fi. You'll be fine.
Totally safe.
So if you come to that in Vegas and you're anywhere near Flamingo and the Boulevard, make sure everything is turned off and you live in the Stone Age around those 2 blocks. I promise.
Yeah, it's at Caesars this year, I believe. It moved from the past year.
That's what I'm saying. Flamingo and the Boulevard.
Any PTM teams that are not on the casino floor.
Yep. I think that I'll be there this year. I'm kind of excited to check that one out. A little terrified, but also excited.
I would be too.
Yep.
I've seen some amazing things there, and I've seen some stuff where I'm like, I never want to talk to that person ever again. Like, stay as far away from that person as you can.
Legitimately, last year someone was spoofing a 4G cell network to try and intercept connections. It was terrifying.
You also don't want to use your real name. Just use your old college bar name.
Well, there's a reason that it's
What's yours, Adam? What's yours, Adam?
Mine's Steven Scott Smith.
I was gonna say mine's Adam Silver.
Wow.
Awesome, folks. Well, that's about it for today. Thank you very much for being on the show. If you like this content and like all the stuff that we're doing, make sure you click on the notes below. We'll have all the links to all the various stuff that we've talked about on those notes. And if you like this particular content, hit the little thumbs up button. And by the way, we do 2 podcasts on WP Water Coolers Network, so make sure you go check out both of those particular shows. You can just do a search for WP Water Cooler in your favorite podcatcher, Steve. Podcatcher. All right, folks. Talk to y'all later.
Our name is Julie.
Bye.